刑事には日常も歳出もありませんからね。それに高連続失踪事件が発生したんでは寝る暇もありませんよ。
連続失踪事件？
いや、ありがとう、ゆきとくん。これで無事出かけられます。じゃあ皆さん、しばらくお店よろしくね。Every rose has its thorn.
Remember to click like, subscribe, the bell notification, and whatever else YouTube has you clicking on to support us. Welcome everyone, I am the Kaiju no Kami from the Toku and Animation News Network, and today I'm taking a look at the original OG 1971 Kamen Rider. Here we are at the very beginning. The show that launched Toei's Tokusatsu ambitions forward. The show that is still going strong to this very day. The show that was almost cancelled. That's right, Kamen Rider was almost cancelled in its first few months, just like Gundam and Macross. When Kamen Rider launched, it was a very dour show and one that did not appeal to children. As such, Toei had decided that they would change the tone of it to make it a bit more lighthearted in the hopes that it would capture their target audience, and if not, then it would be cancelled. There is irony in this aspect, as Kamen Rider came about after manga author Shotaro Ishinomori pitched to Toei a TV adaptation of his Skullman manga, which was considerably darker and more violent. Other ideas included turning the manga anime Tiger Mask into live action, but Toei decided not to do something that already existed. This led to Ishinomori apparently asking his son what he liked, and he told his dad grasshoppers. Thus, the motif for Kamen Rider came about as Ishinomori combined his ideas from the Flying Phantom, Cyborg 009, and Skullman to create Kamen Rider. Anyway, something truly tragic happened to help with this tonal shift. Kamen Rider's lead actor, Hiroshi Fujioka, ended up being injured in a motorcycle stunt while filming the show's 10th episode. It was severe enough that Toei was going to have to get a new lead in, which also gave them the opportunity to lighten the show's mood up without it coming across forced. And as such, with the introduction of a second Kamen Rider, the show became a success. So much so that it ran for 98 episodes, and even then, it was not planned to stop. The success of Kamen Rider means this has to be one of the greatest Toku series ever conceived, right? Well, much to find out. The heroes. As stated, Kamen Rider includes 2 masked heroes, though they rarely ever fight together. Fujioka's Hongo Takeshi is our first Kamen Rider. Hongo is a biochemist who aspires to be a motorcycle racer. At the start of the show, he is practicing with his mentor, Tobi Tachibana, played by Ultraman's oh-so-great Akiji Kobayashi, when he is kidnapped by some vile villains who work for a terrorist organization called Shocker. Shocker turns Hongo into a cyborg in the form of a grasshopper, but he manages to escape before they could brainwash him. Which did allow for a very hilarious scene to occur decades later in an anime called Miss Kuroitsu and the Monster Development Department.
I gave him the ultimate body, and then he got away before his brain was finished, and in the end, we had to fight him. But why?
When developing a new monster, we always start by giving them a loyal brain so they won't try to escape.
Why couldn't I have started with the brain?
He takes a scientist with him who was being forced to work for Shocker named Dorikawa. Midorikawa is ultimately killed right in front of his daughter Roriko, who thinks Hongo intentionally murdered him and vows vengeance.
What? 「 What? 」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 「」 "」 「」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "」 "" "" 「" 「" 「" 証拠は何もないのよ。
For all of one episode, and then she finds out Hongo is actually the good guy and teams up with him.
あなたが父を殺したものと恨んでました。でも父を殺したのはショッカーという恐ろしい組織。私、あなたに今までご迷惑をおかけしたせめてもの償いにお役に立ちたいんです。
Hongo informs Tachibana of his plight. Together, the trio declare they will defend the world from Shocker's terror. At least until Hongo and Ruriko suddenly leave Japan to go after Shocker's European headquarters.
本郷武史はショッカーの別計画を追って日本を離れた。
外国行ったのか。
そうです。ルリコさんも後を追っていきました。
Ruriko is never spoken again after this, making her pretty pointless. Hell, from this point forward, there will always be a revolving cheerleader squad around, so our heroes have to rescue at least one of them in almost every episode. Let's see, there's Princess Peach. And Princess Daisy. And Zelda.
待て。どうすればいいんだ。
物分かりが良くなったね。
And Rosalina.
どうしたのミカちゃん。
And Princess Luigi.
私たちもうダメだわ。
苦しめ、もっと苦しめ。
And Princess Toadstool.
元気を出しなさいよマキ。もうすぐライダー隊のタクさんも来てくれるはずよ。
Granted, she's technically the same person, but since all these girls are basically the same character, it checks out. And I'm kind of out of damsels in distress at the moment, so crap. Seriously, the roster of the girls changes about every 20 to 30 episodes, with the only memorable one being a girl named Yuri because she is the only one who stays throughout the majority of the show. Nevertheless, if I had to pick a favorite, it would be Maria. She's the most distinct girl and she will often fight back when necessary. Moving on, Hongo did not leave Japan unprotected as apparently between episodes he freed another victim of Shockers from their control, who was also being turned into a grasshopper man. This is where photographer Hayate Ichimonji comes into play, and he takes up the mantle of being Japan's Kamen Rider. Ichimonji is played by Takeshi Sasaki.
お前、ショッカーの一味だろ。
え、ショッカー。俺はシャッターなら専門だけどね。
シャッター。どうも話が噛み合わねえ。
行く道だって違うんだもんな。
You may notice that Ichimonji is never actually riding a bike for half of his tenure. That is because Sasaki did not have a motorcycle license, so he could not ride one. There's truly no difference between Hongo and Ichimonji as far as fighting styles are concerned. Their costumes are a tad different, as Hongo has more of a blue color to go with his black outfit, while Ichimonji is green and silver. Personality-wise, I think Ichimonji is vastly superior, as I found Hongo to be an utter bore of a character. He had little charisma, spoke very blandly, and was not the least bit exciting to watch. Ichimonji, on the other hand, was very charming, he often made smart-ass remarks, and was very cautious towards shocker plots.
お前はおい、隼人。
やっぱりお前か。ショッカーもとんだ山男捕まえたもんだ。
鍵を開けただけじゃダメだ。警戒が厳重で脱出できん。
Meanwhile, freaking Hongo seemed to walk into every trap Shocker set, and would act surprised when he did.
やっぱりこの中に薬が。あ。
It's a trap!
うん。
It's a trap!
罠だったのか。
Hongo was a friggin' moron.
する仮面ライダー貴様の死ぬのは明朝6時
罠にはまったな。
今度こいつらダムに毒を流す計画なんだ。何
The two also rarely ever fought together, which I think was the biggest disappointment of all. I was always under the impression that after Hongo returned, the duo tag teamed their enemies, and this show became a two-man team. Instead, when Hongo returns to Japan for good, assumingly ending Shocker's European operations in episode 52, Ichimonji leaves for South America. It's quite disappointing as having two heroes for the second half of the show would have given it the change of pace it was in desperate need of. Rather, all they did was give our heroes updated costumes that didn't look shoddily constructed.
ライダー変身
Assisting the Kamen Riders is an FBI agent by the name of Kazuya Taki, played by Sonny Chiba's younger brother Jiro.
Thank you.
We are first introduced to Taki on his wedding day, which leads him into having to save his bride from Shocker. From then on, he would stay stationed in Japan to help the Riders and Tachibana in their quest, though we never hear about his wife again. I'm unsure if she stayed in Japan or went back to America. She's not even around at the end when he does go back to the US, so I'm going to guess she left the country after their marriage. Taki was a pretty cool character who was also far more likable than Hongo. He started out as a fill-in for Fujioka's absence and ended up becoming his own thing. He added a new dynamic to the show because he was the third party that would sometimes get information on an upcoming Shocker plot from his bosses in America.
本部からの通信を受けてね。で、メキシコから来たというショッカーの幹部は。敵も去るものだ。尾行を巻かれたが、何？奴が日本のどこへ行ったか調べはついている。
Speaking of Tachibana, I've barely even talked about him. We don't seem to learn much about him. Apparently his family died in an accident. He ended up meeting Hongo and looked at him as a surrogate son, which helped him move past his grief. He ran a small snack cafe for the first 13 episodes, which then evolved into his own motorbike garage for the majority of the series until it became the headquarters for a Kamen Rider club.
隊長！
どうしたんだそんなに慌てて
チョコの友達がゲルショッカーに捕まったの。
何くそーなんてこったタキがついていながらお前たち急いで少年ライダー隊に協力を要請するんだ
The Rider Kids Corps was a group full of children who would scout the city in search for any Shocker plots. Tachibana is a good-hearted guy who will put his life on the line to save someone even though he isn't a skilled fighter in the slightest. He is a role model and a good mentor figure. Oddly enough, there's a child character named Goro, Yuri's younger brother, who ends up being a part of the series right up until the Riders Kid Corps is founded. Then he suddenly disappears. It's like the moment the show found a use for him, he left right out of the blue in the same manner Ruriko had. He doesn't even get name dropped as leaving. The villains. If you don't know by now, the villains are called Shocker. They're supposed to be an offshoot of a Nazi organization that focused on turning humans into cyborg monstrosities.
ショッカーはナチスドイツで研究されたという移植手術などの手法で昆虫や動物の機能を持つ改造人間を作っていた。
Their leader is a disembodied voice who sounds a lot like Goro Naya.
では今度立ち上がるのだ人類から平和を奪い取りショッカーの世界征服のために尽くすのださあお前の破壊力を試してみるがよい
Seriously though, Naya would go on to voice every villain leader in Kamen Rider until Black. He was the villain in God Mars, Rosewater and the Big O, and the voice of Zenigata from Lupin III for many decades. He does absolutely nothing the entire show but bark orders. Even in the last third of the show, he declares Shocker is dead and has now been replaced with Gel Shocker, which is supposed to be a more dangerous version of Shocker.
名前を変えれば強くなると思ってるのか
ゲルショッカーは無敵の軍団だ 俺様が相手になるまでもない。
Unfortunately, for us the viewer, there is no actual difference between putting Gal in front of Shocker. It doesn't gel. There are a selected number of generals that come in and go as the show progresses, all of whom are pretty moot. None of them get much in the way of character development, and the show really just relies on the actors themselves to try to make the villains remotely memorable, which typically falls flat. There is Colonel Zoll, who dresses like a Nazi commander and has an eye patch.
そしてこの秘密基地とともに一文字隼人も吹っ飛ばすんだ。
Wait, aren't you even gonna watch them? They could get away.
No. I'm going to leave them alone and not actually witness them dying. I'm just going to assume it all went to plan. What?
Jiro Miyaguchi plays this fascist freak who is more bark than he is bite.
服装が乱れている。服装のたるみは精神がたるんでいる証拠だ。私は来た以上、たるみは絶対に許せん。
After him comes Hideo Yamamoto's Dr. Death.
多分この中にダイヤモンド鉱山の地図が入っていたはずだ。それはきっとヒロシが持っているに違いない。急ぎんちゃく、もう一度行ってこい。
You may recognize Yamamoto for he played Doctor Who in King Kong Escapes, Princess Sono's butler in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, a priest in Etrigan, among many others.
いや、その乾杯はショッカーにとって最大の難関である。日本を占領するまでご期待しよう。
Following Dr. Death is Ambassador Hell, a man whose helmet appears to be on so tight it is turning actor Kenji Yoshio's face purple.
東南アジアで暴れ回ったこの地獄大使、選ばれて日本に来た以上、必ず仮面ライダーを倒しますぞ。
The Gale Shocker commander we get is General Black, who is from their African division.
エルショッカー日本支部編成のためにはるばるアフリカ砂漠からやってきたブラック将軍と覚えておけ。
Yeah, that's not racist at all. At least they didn't put him in blackface. Black is played by Matasaburo Niwa.
今度ライダーの邪魔が入っても必ず奴を倒させてみせます。
As I said, all these generals are pretty one-dimensional, but they each do have a monster form to go out on.
俺の本当の姿を今見せてやる。
いない。どこだ。うわ仮面ライダー。 今度はイカデビルが相手だ。
The grunts are known simply as combat men. Now, I do find the evolution of the combat men to be quite interesting because what we know their designs to be as portrayed in modern mediums is not how they started. In the beginning, the combat men were men who wore berets instead of masks with black and red outfits.
やれ。
There were even women versions for a few episodes who looked like they stepped out of a porno. Eventually, they were men wearing black masks. And then at episode 53, they started wearing outfits with the skeletal print on them, as is the standard today. There was an interesting moment where Taki took on the disguise of Combat Man without realizing the colors were a ranking system.
外交策に使用する武器は
メキシコから運んだメキシコの花。おい、貴様、監視員なのにどうして作戦部にいる？
服を気間違えちまった。
The Gale Shocker Combat Men wear blue or purple and yellow uniforms with a blue and red mask. During their first appearance, they revealed to Hongo that they have been programmed to die if they are not injected with a toxin every 3 hours, which was meant to drive up their motivation to succeed in battle.
薬！俺たちは3時間ごとに薬を飲まないと消える！あ、もうダメだ！
It was a neat idea that was never mentioned again for the rest of the series. I'm quite saddened by this, as it could have led to some interesting plots of our heroes trying to find a way to save the combat men rather than defeat them, but I guess that would have required more thought than the show was willing to give. Then again, they can't even handle children. The shocker monsters are often made up of men and women who have been transformed into cyborgs by shocker scientists. However, they will occasionally experiment on a fossil or plant to create a monster without a human being as its host body. Some of my favorite shocker monsters include Cobra Man, a monster who is so powerful his gas ends up killing himself named Pewtersaurus, Mushroom Man, who spores no expense in poisoning people. A moth monster who has both larvae and adult forms. A unicorn.
Polish my magic cord.
A creepy looking cicada, for he has microphones in place of eyes. And a bloodthirsty anemone. Gal shocker monsters are two different creatures fused into one, which allows us to have some interesting combinations like Jelly Wolf, Center Tigerpede,
ではただいまよりゲルショッカーに忠誠を誓え。ゲルショッカー自動検証第1条。
急なと混乱を我らの敵は平和と正義。
and another Menene mixed with a jaguar.
俺はゲルショッカーの改造人間イソギンジャガーだ。
Funny enough, this show has not one, not two, but three bat-type creatures. There's Batman, then Crabbat, and finally Cactus Bat. This show is just batty. Finally, there is one more set of villains that make an appearance for a pair of episodes known as the Shocker Riders. They're basically evil Kamen Riders, but with different colored scarves.
Shocker Rider number 1, Shocker Rider number 2, Shocker Rider number 3, Shocker Rider number 4, Shocker Rider number 5, Shocker Rider number 6.
And oh my god, are our heroes stupid as all kinds of hell. They know the riders typically wear red scarves, but don't even realize the one they are helping out has a yellow one.
Rider! こんなこったらと思ってたぞ。ご心配かけてすまない。
Like, how stupid can you be? This is horror movie levels of stupid. Like, I heard a noise in the kitchen, I'm gonna go check it out levels of stupid. Nah, bitch, the kitchen's over there, where that noise came from, door's right there, I'm getting the hell up out of here, bye. The Shocker Riders are a cool idea, but like everything else in the show, their potential is squandered on mediocrity. The effects and music. Okay. This is the first Kamen Rider show ever. I need to be nice. The effects are bad, especially in the first half. The Kamen Rider suits look so hastily put together that it looks like someone's cosplay gone wrong. You can see the eyes of the suit actors through the thinly constructed cloth below the big grasshopper eyes. On one hand, it was pretty ingenious in the way the production team would use random objects as someone was disintegrating from a monster attack. On the other, it came across quite cheap. They also did a really bad job dubbing Hongo's dialogue with someone who rarely ever sounded like him.
原子力研究所を襲って罪もない守衛を殺したのはショッカーに違いない。きっと彼らはまた新しい攻撃をかけてくるだろう。
And I'm not just talking about the 3 episodes Fujioka was missing due to his injury, but also later on in the show. There are a couple of episodes where he is not seen outside of his rider suit, and the voiceover they have is horrible.
そうか。貴様たちは滝たちも生贄にするつもりか。そうとも。さあ、ショッカーの墓場とやらに案内してもらおうか。いい。
I'm unsure as to why Fujioka was gone during those episodes, nor why they couldn't just have Ichimonji star in those ones if he wasn't going to be there, but whoever did the dubbing for Hongo did a really bad job.
エリザベス、こいつを頂戴していくぜ。
It reminded me of the terrible voices used for Jason, Zack, and Trini in the episodes of Power Rangers the actors refused to appear in with how inauthentic they sounded. Alternatively, stunt work is well done for the most part, despite there being an occasional moment where the villain is punched even though the rider's fist was nowhere near them. There are several well choreographed fights, with some being on the ledge of a building or wall. There's a really neat sequence at a mountain resort that has the camera recording from a lift while Hongo battles the combatmen. Dragon Ball and Gamera fans should recognize tones of the soundtrack, for they come from the masterful Shunsuke Kikuchi. Kikuchi has provided an incredible score that is one of the biggest highlights that will often pull you out of the boredom that sometimes plagues this show's repetitious nature. I don't know why, but I never tire of hearing this track. There are 4 different theme songs used across its 98 episode run. The first opening theme is titled Let's Go Rider Kick, which is heard across the first 88 episodes.
Kamen Rider, Kamen Rider,
One mistake I made during my Gold Ranger reviews, I had mentioned the opening was sung by Yoshinomori himself, when it was not. He wrote the lyrics to the song, as he did here, but it was others who performed them. Let's Go Rider Kick is sung by Fujioka for the first 13 episodes, while artist Masato Shiman covered it for the second version when Fujioka departed the show. Shiman would go on to sing the remaining songs for Kamen Rider, with the second opening titled Rider Action. Rider Action originated as the second ending theme for episodes 71 to 88. Before Rider Action came Kamen Rider no Uta, with Lonely Kamen Rider finishing out the last 10 episodes. My feelings on all of these songs are all over the place. Let's Go Rider Kick's been stuck in my head for decades, while I pretty much forgot Rider Action the moment I finished the show. The other two closings are also unmemorable, but they do get the job done of pulling you out of Kamen Rider's action. The episodes. Given this is the first Kamen Rider series, do not expect much in the way of plot or character development. Many of you will know Kamen Rider's head writer, Masaru Agami, as being the father to the great Toshiki Inoue, who would go on to give us the masterpieces of Jetman, Don Brothers, and Kamen Rider Agito. Agami does a good job of laying out the main premise of the show and providing us with Hongo's lament as he realizes he has lost his humanity. But once you get past those initial episodes, everything plays out in repetition. Shocker plots, Hongo or Ichimonji is alerted of their plot, and a battle pursues. Rinse and repeat over for what feels like forever. Many of the plots are pretty dull and boring once you become acclimated to the show's formula, especially during the first grueling 13 episodes. Things do improve a bit, at least for a little while, when Hongo is replaced by Ichimonji, because as I said earlier, Ichimonji actually had a personality compared to super serious, no-nonsense, boring as all hell Hongo. It also helps that Ichimonji was assisted by Taki, who spiced the diversity of the cast up a bit. The ending is total trash and feels anticlimactic. I'm also not exactly sure as to why we needed to have a trio of girls at all times when they really amounted to nothing. Still, you get pretty accustomed to how each episode is going to play out regardless of who the general is, nor what the plot of the week may entail. I do like that the show does not hold back on killing civilians, I just wish it was consistent. One of the major problems is the plot armor our major characters and children are shielded with. A perfect example of this comes in the form of episode 37, the poison gas monster Wolfbane's Operation G. In this episode, a couple finds some flowers while on a hike that ends up killing them the instant a poison gas spits out of them. A passerby witnesses this and tries to help them, only to be disintegrated by Shocker Monster Wolfbane. At the same time, they discover a child saw everything going on and he orders 2 combat men to kill the kid. Later, at their base, the combat men return to tell Wolfsbane where the child lives, which contradicts the orders he gave them. Okay, but whatever. Maybe they just thought he meant locate him as like where he lives or something. So, okay, cool. General Zoe then orders Wolfsbane to kill the child.
お前はその前に何としても実験現場を目撃した少年の口を塞がねばならないのだ。
Instead, he brings the child to the base as a prisoner, and then later on, Zoe tells him to execute the kid with a bunch of others they plan to get rid of.
ドール大佐、あの小僧は。
お前は私の指示に従えばよい。
え、五郎たちと？
石倉五郎たちと一緒に死ぬ。五郎たちには私はすでに手を打ってある。お前は私の指示に従えばよい。
What? But wait! There's more! While this is happening, Tachiban and the girls receive the same plant that killed the hikers earlier as a gift and are gassed. Quite some time passes by before Ichimonji and Taki enter the room, and they start to air it out before waking the trio up, who are perfectly fine, even though the gas killed the hiker couple within seconds.
マリ、大丈夫だ。死んじゃいない。新鮮な空気を吸えば助かるぞ。そうか、よかった。どうしたんだ。おい、おい、おい、引かせるんだ。おい、死んでる。
And this is why this episode became my least favorite episode of the show. I understand you can't actually kill off your main characters, but then you shouldn't be putting them into the exact same scenario that killed other characters off in moments when they are going to be spending more time under its effects. And this would be a constant problem across the entire 98 episode run, which really made it hard to feel anything for these characters when the exact same thing would happen repeatedly. Another example comes from the Pyrosaurus episode. Two of the girls are at a club and go into a back room to call Tachibana. While they do this, Pyrosaurus enters the club, killing everyone. As it happens, his gas did not reach the back room, leaving our female duo alive to tell the tale.
どうなっちゃったの？ほんと、みんなお休みになっちゃってさ。ねえってばー。
Then we have one with a scientist whose car is blown off a cliff, but the dude is still alive.
Hello out there. I see you falling down. I'm still alive. I'm very badly injured. I think my legs might be broken. Try to stand up. Yes, they are broken. Perhaps you could toss me a bandage or some antibacterial cream. I'm in extraordinary, very large amounts of pain.
ミノル君、大丈夫だよ。きっとすぐ治るよ。
There's also some weird moments throughout the series where plot points just seem to disappear, like in one episode where a young girl's mother is killed along with an entire apartment complex, and after our heroes get the girl out of the building safe and sound, she is never heard from again. Funny enough, my favorite episode of the series was the one before the Wolfsbane episode because it felt like a mummy movie within a Kamen Rider story. Resurrected mummy monster Aegyptus features Shocker resuscitating a pharaoh looking for some ancient gemstones that could be used to finance their operations. Problem is, Aegyptus only speaks Egyptian, requiring Shocker to hunt down an archaeologist knowledgeable in the language.
時価10億円の宝石類は日本のどこに送られたんだ。どうしたエジプタス？
It may play out like a typical Rider episode, but the added bonus of getting a mummy movie out of it made it very exciting. I also like how Aegyptus accidentally kills the first professor Shocker finds to translate for them. And by accidentally, I mean on purpose because he got mad. The movies. Kamen Rider has 2 theatrical films. As with the times, they're more like theatrical episodes. The first one is set between episodes 51 and 52 as Ichimonji is still stationed in Japan during this one. Shocker attacks a geophysics lab for a new gravity machine, requiring Ichimonji and Taki to rescue the surviving scientist and protect him and his family. It's also the first time we actually see the combatmen on screen with the skull shirts. Anyway, Shocker does the most evil thing anyone can do. Burn a child's birthday cake.
じゃあやるわね。火事になるの。みんなどうから逃げろ。
You bastards! Obviously, they try to kidnap the scientist's daughter, only to have to contend with Hongo, who is returned to Japan again.
この娘を置いておとなしく退散したまえ。黙れ。貴様こそ邪魔をすれば命はないぞ。私の言葉が聞こえないと見える。行くぞ。
Many monsters from the past appear.
ムカデラス、メストーン、アルマジロング、ナベクジラ、ザンブロンゾ、エジプタス、ゴースター、ユニコルノス、カニバブラ。
We get a cool bike chase.
大地を蹴ってライダージャンプ空中回
And overall, it was a fun film. The second movie, taking place between 68 and 69, is solely a Hongo film, so no Ichimonji here, sadly. Hongo and Taki are attacked by Shocker during a bike race, forcing them to forfeit the race in order to track Shocker down.
タケ、油断するな。バカめが二人揃ってのこのこやってきたな。本郷、タッキー、地獄大師。
Of course, Tachibana and the princesses are kidnapped by Shocker and have to be rescued because why not? We get another cool bike chase. And a pretty cool fight sequence on Mount Fuji. Oh, and some really bad effects for a crucifixion scene.
Ooh, that's bad.
But hey, there's some fighting with villains on horseback, so that's cool. This one was definitely inferior to the first film, and part of it was due to the lack of energy it had. The location shots are great, but the story and music left a lot to be desired. Overall, the first Kamen Rider was not exactly great by any means. In fact, it was a chore to get through. Thus, I am going to give Kamen Rider the generous first-timers 3 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. If this had been a later series, it would have lost a point. At 98 episodes, it is just a long journey to trek through and doesn't have an ending to make it pay off. The ending sucks. I don't even know if you could really call that an ending, it just kind of stops. This is definitely a series that is only for the die-hard Kamen Rider fan or the person who absolutely needs to see how it all started. Everyone else, there's so much better out there that you can kind of skip this. Until next time, bye.
Phrasing?